It's not often you get a call from a pastor in the middle of a work week, right? And when he called me, I was like, okay, hey, pastor, what do you want? He said, I want you to share about this. Okay, not many people know what my wife and I went through. Maybe a few of you here will know. When he mentioned it, I was like, oh, do I really want to share about this? It's quite personal. Then as I looked back and I thought about it, I said, yes, why not? You know, a lot of you may be going through something like this, not as bad maybe, but similar, right? And just want to give God all the praise and glory. I like what Pastor mentioned about Jesus moments. What I'm going to share it's just not one or two. It's like what I say. How I want to put it is, as I recalled back, because this happened over 20 years ago. Okay, 20 years ago. So by telling you this story, most of you will know my age after this. So as I recall back what the goodness of God, the faithfulness of God and His mercies, I like to term it, you now see His fingerprints in so many of the things that happen in my life. Like what Pastor preached about Peter a couple of weeks ago, not this Peter, the one in the Bible, although he did call Pastor in the middle of the service, right? You really don't know why you're going through what you're going through now, right? But God knows, because looking back from where I am now, and you know, they always say hindsight is 20/20 vision. You have perfect vision when you're looking back. Some of the things that I went through, I doubted, you know, why am I going through this, you know, and what's happening to me? And looking back now, of course, I'm not perfect. I'm still going through a journey, but you can see that, you know, God knows your beginning from your end. He's the Alpha and Omega. He's beyond time, you know. He's beyond our time. He knows He knows me even before I was formed. Okay, back to the story. So because it's happened 20 years ago, I need to just reduce it, because then if I go through it, then we'll most probably end up in Christmas, you know. Okay. It happened in the 1990s, mid 1990s. I just graduated, got a job, was working for my dad, got married, had a house, you know, just the normal thing that you were going through. I mean, some people say the future looked bright. Yes, it was. I mean, it was. And somehow, sometimes when you're going through this, you tend to not think of God so often. You know, it's like, oh, it's a career thing. You know, you just graduated, you need to work and, you know, build up your career. Then what happened was almost overnight, because of the Asian financial crisis, my dad's company went bust. And because I was one of the directors in the company, the company was wound up and we were in debt. And because of that, as a personal guarantor to the debts, before the age of 30, I was a couple of $1 million in debt, bankrupt. That's why I say it was very personal for me at that time. And I got to stop here and say that, guys, if you're looking for a wife, I tell you, if you find a good wife, you found a good treasure. You know, at that time we were just married, no kids, and among the so many other questions that were passing through my mind, the first question was, is this marriage going to last? You know, I'm below 30, before 30, the future was supposed to be so bright, and now I am about to lose the house and no job. You know, so two main questions was, why and how? Why? Very simple. I didn't read the book of Proverbs. Don't stand guarantor for some things that you don't have control over, you know. I was sad to say that, but my dad's business management skills and his money management skills were not along the godly path, right? So it's just the law of sowing and reaping, right? You will always reap what you sow. That was the easy question to answer. But then the difficult question was how? How am I going to get out of this? It's like Psalm 23, you're walking through the shadow of the valley of the shadow of death, and I couldn't even see the light at the end of the tunnel. But I thank God, like I said, as I was going through, recalling what happened throughout this episode, I can now say that I see Jesus moments throughout. throughout this whole journey that we went through, I could see his fingerprints in so many of the things that I went through. I mean, firstly, of course, we had to sell our house. Okay, we were homeless, and I was out of a job. And my wife was working, supporting both of us. And the first job offer that came to me was I had to be stationed out of the state. I had to go back. I had to go to Johor to revive a failed project. I was like, okay, I'm out of the frying pan into the fire. I mean, my dad's company got wound up, and now the only job offer that I had was to try to revive a failed project, and that was also a really difficult project. And besides all that, my wife and I sat down and said, what are we going to do about this? She said, we just trust the Lord, which was really difficult, because in between all that, you still needed to go through all the legal things, You're now a bankrupt, you cannot actually have a bank account, you cannot travel, you have to report to the insolvency department, you have to report to the official assignee, you need to pay money into your account, and, but in all that, my wife and I, we still, we were faithful in our tithes. It was a funny thing. It's like, shall we pay the tithe? I said, why not? The amount that we're paying the tithes is so insignificant. It's not going to go and help me, my dad. It's 1 million over, It's not going to help pay my dad. So we just faithful with our tithe, faithful with our serving. But throughout this journey, the first thing that crossed my mind was like, Lord, if you are God, okay, I'm going to put you to the test. I said, by the age of 40, I want this to be resolved. And I was in the late 20s at that time. I knew it's not going to happen overnight because the debt didn't happen overnight. The debt was over a period of time built upon, right? So of course you can't unravel a $1 million debt overnight. So, but we were still faithful in our serving. And God provided the job that I had, although I thought it was a dead-end, mundane thing, but it worked out later on to be something that opened up avenues for other things, right? So to cut the very long story short, over the 10 years, we struggled, right? Of course, definitely we struggled. We had to pay the official assignee and all that. So at the age of the year before I turned 40, I had a bit of savings in my account, okay? But let me backtrack, okay? Jesus moments were like, the official assignee assigned to my case was a Malay lady, and she was so really helpful, favor with God, favor with man, favor with authority. They actually taught me how to do this and how to get about. Then my employers, I mean, when you find out that your staff, number one, is a bankrupt, right? Then they will be thinking, oh, he can't handle his own finances. How are we allowing him to handle our company's finances, right? But they allowed me to do that. In fact, they said, okay, since you can't have a bank account, why not we do this for you so that you still get a salary, right? So it was favor with men, favor with authorities, okay? So back to just before I turned 40, I had a bit of savings put aside, okay? It was also through God's blessings. But it was nowhere near the amount that, the full amount that I had to pay off my debt. Then I sat down with my wife and said, shall we just propose settlement because you owe a few people, so you propose a settlement. So she said, yes, why not give it a shot, right? So we just prayed about it. And I approached each and every one of them. I said, look here, I'm sorry, the company owes you money. The company's been wound up. So I'm struggling to make ends meet, but I have this money. But the thought that crossed my mind before I did that was like, God, this is all I have, right? If I settle this, then I'm back to zero. But then the Bible did say you don't owe people any money, right? You don't owe people money, right? So I said, okay, now my God, if you can give me this amount of money to pay off, I'm sure you'll be able to bless me with more. Okay, so I went and approached it, and each and every one of them, a very humbling experience, right? Very humbling experience to tell them, look, I owe you money. And also a very humbling experience to ask them to give you a discount. So, and I started with those that were the least, those that the company owed 40,000, 50,000. And what I did was I I offered them maybe 20 cents to $1. So, okay, I owe you this amount. Can I pay you this? Can I pay you this amount? So, favor with God. Everybody said yes. Okay, so they gave me a letter saying that, no, they gave the OA a letter, official signing a letter saying the debt that so-and-so owed, we will accept this amount as full and final settlement. Okay, so, but then there was this one company which we owed over R1 million. But at that time, after going through everybody else, I only had 100,000 ringgit left to settle. So I thought this was an impossible task. Never would anybody, accept this. So, but I did call the manager in charge, and he still recognized my voice. He said, "Oh, how are you? How's your dad?" And I said, "Okay, we are fine." He said, "Can we meet up?" I said, "Okay." So we met up. Then he said, then I said, "Hey, we owe you so much money." He said, "Yeah, it's been a long time. My bosses have been, I said, "Yeah, but you made me a bankrupt, right? So I can't really do anything about it." So finally, I said, "Okay, I have this amount of money." And he said, "Well, that's not what we were expecting, that's not the amount we were expecting." But he said, "Never mind. Let me go back and speak to my bosses about it, and I'll come back to you." So he went, I went back, I prayed with my wife, and lo and behold, they agreed to accept 100,000 ringgit for $1 million debt, So this is definitely something that was beyond us. None of us could have engineered this. Nobody could have engineered this. And even the official assignee couldn't believe it. Betul lah. You hutang dia 1 juta lebih, dia terima 100,000. I said, yeah, betul. So in the year 2011, I finally managed to discharge myself. And of course, we still go through trials and testings. But I can safely say that, going through this episode from that 10 years of going through, I could see God's hands, His fingerprints in so many of the things. And what happened was the job that I was working at, from 2003 till 2012, the company decided that they didn't want to run it anymore, and they just said like, "Okay, look here, we don't like to go, we don't like to be in this industry anymore. We want to diversify." So I said, "Then what's going to happen to me?" He said, "Well, if you want, you make us an offer, we can sell the company to you lah." So I was like, it was like I was being trained from 2003 to handle it until 2012, when they actually made me the offer to ask me to take over that company. That's another testimony altogether. I wouldn't want to go into that, maybe. But I'm reminded of what Pastor was preaching 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago about being faithful with what you have. Not looking at what other people have. What others are being blessed with, and just being faithful with what abilities you have, what resources you have, and also just being able to continue sowing into the kingdom. I like to conclude with this. There's this song that I'm sure some of the musicians know. It's a Michael W. Smith song. It's called "Surrounded." I fight my battles, right? So naturally, we all feel at that time, when I was at that low period, we were being surrounded. Yes, so much circumstances. What am I going to do? What am I going to do if I lose my house? What am I going to do if I don't get a job? Who's going to pay for the, Astro bill? All these simple things that we take for granted today is like big questions in my mind. Who's going to pay for the next car installment? Is my wife's salary, is her salary, is it going to be enough for both of us? How are we going to cut down on our expenses? It was really overwhelming, So it's like, when you are really surrounded, remember that we're actually surrounded by Him. I'm reminded of this story in 2 Kings, that when Elisha and Gehazi were surrounded by the Syrian army, because this Elisha had this ability to tell the Israelites where the Syrian army is going to be. So the Syrian army king got really pissed off, because Elisha really just really wanted to get Elisha, because Elisha was just telling the Israeli kings, hey, they're going to be here, avoid them. So they came with this huge army and surrounded both of them, right? But Elisha knew that behind them, above them, were angels, chariots of fire with flaming swords. But Gehazi didn't, right? Gehazi didn't. So he panicked. So when Elisha prayed and Gehazi's eyes were open, then he realized, even though we were surrounded, we're actually surrounded by God, right? So sometimes we just need to remove our natural lenses and have lens of faith. Like what Murli said, life is full. We have to have faith, right? So we will know that, even though through overwhelming odds, through whatever situations that you're going through, just be faithful with whatever you have. God will come through. God will come through. He came through for me and my wife, right? Just want to thank you for this time.